Hey everyone, it's Dan from The Plague here. I'm back with another album review. This week I'm going to be talking about the latest album from Satan, and it's called Earth Infernal and is out on Metal Blade Records on April 1st, 2022. So this is a band, if you don't know, that has been around for over 40 years. They formed in 1979 in Newcastle, England. They put out a single in the early 80s, and then they released their classic debut, Court in the Act, in 1983. Unfortunately, they went through quite a bit of number of name changes. They changed their name to Blind Fury and did an album. They changed their name back to Satan, did an EP and an album, changed their name to Pariah and did 3 more albums. And this brings us up into the early 90s when they kind of called it quits and were pretty much laying low for a long time. Despite having a somewhat volatile lineup over the years, especially in the vocal department, the band did manage to get the 5 guys that played on the 83 debut back together in 2011. Since that time, they have been very consistent in releasing albums and touring, and this will be the 4th album since the reunion. Beyond identifying the band as a heavy metal band or a new wave British heavy metal band, it's kind of hard to describe their sound because there's no easy markers. It's not like there's clear influences from Priest or Sabbath or anyone else. Kind of my general description it would be, if you know Angel Witch, it kind of a cross between Angel Witch and Merciful Fate. It's got that darker, more complex sound going on than a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal bands had. The song arrangements are very dense, and they tend to, even if they're on the shorter side, they have a lot of twists and turns in it, which I really appreciate. It makes it hard to get into on the first couple listens because there's no immediate, catchy hooks or choruses to really bring you back into the song, but it makes for a very replayable album. So every time you listen to it, you kind of pick up on something new, and you just really appreciate the craftsmanship of the riff writing and the way they've arranged it as well. So the album opens with the song Ascendancy, which is a great opening track. It's very speedy and heavy. It's complex, though, and it's fairly long. It's over 5 minutes long, which is kind of the norm for the songs on this album. It doesn't have any kind of, long intro. It's just straight into killer guitar riff and goes from there. Burning Portrait is next, and it's a little bit more of a straightforward song, but it's got a really cool kind of offbeat melodic chorus to it that's got a little bit of a swing feel to it that's really unusual, but works perfectly. 12 Infernal Lords is an interesting one because it starts off with a fairly straightforward feel to it, but about halfway through the song, it kind of takes a darker detour and it continues in that direction for the remainder of the song. Mercury's Shadow is a short instrumental song. By short, I mean it's still almost 3 minutes long. And it's interesting. It starts off and ends with kind of a very 70s Sabbath sort of acoustic bit. That's pretty cool. And speaking of the 70s, the next song, A Sorrow Unspent, has a sort of mystical Eastern vibe to it that reminds me a lot of the classic Rainbow stuff. The song Luciferic is one of the real gems of the album. It's got a very catchy chorus to it, and it's also just got this really cool kind of occult rock feel to it overall. That's as much as all of Satan's songs are slightly, have their own personality, this one just really stood out to me as one of the most original and just best executed, period. The next 2 are From Second Sight and A Poison Elegy, and these are probably my least favorite on the album, but at the same time, they're still excellent songs. From Second Sight in particular is one of the more upbeat songs, and it's got just a great solo in it, for example. So yeah, even at the worst, this album is still, there's really no filler tracks on this album, which is cool. The Blood Ran Deep is another song that's got just a really cool, memorable chorus to it. And the album wraps up with Earth We Bequeath, which is another real gem on this album. It has a lot of cool different sections to it, and it just has some of the best riffs on the album. Brian Roth's vocal style is it's pretty unique, and it's something that took me a while over the years to get used to and really enjoy. It's kind of a mid to lower middle range, but occasionally he'll just break out these amazing screams that just really highlight how good a vocalist he is. Guitarist Steve Ramsey and Russ Tippins make a real powerhouse team. They are obviously great riff writers, but they also just they throw in a lot of just great solos throughout, and in places that I think other bands wouldn't think to put them, which is always cool. Graham English's bass playing is maybe not as upfront as some of the other elements in the band, but as you listen to the album more and really kind of get into what he's doing, it's actually really cool. Like he'll go off from what the drums or the guitar is playing fairly often and just kind of do his own thing, and it's the kind of thing that Sabbath did a lot that I really, really loved. And he never does it at the expense of the song, so that's always important. And finally, Sean Taylor's drums. I mean, his style is great. It fits the music perfectly. You can't easily pigeonhole it as like, John Bonham influenced or Bill Ward influence. It's definitely its own thing. The one downside of this album for me is the sound of the drums and kind of the mix on them is not as good as the last couple albums. They just seem a little more wooden and a little more buried in the mix, and I'm not sure what happened there. The overall mix is actually pretty good. Like you can hear all the instruments well, but it's just the drums don't really come through as much as powerfully as they did like on Cruel Magic, for example. So the album artwork is amazing. Once again, they're working with Elron Cantor once more, who did the last 3 album covers, and I don't know that I love this one quite as much as Cruel Magic, which is just to me one of the great album covers of recent years. But it's still really good. And the one thing I do appreciate about it is that it's different from the last 3 albums. They've always had the motif of the skeletal judge and the kind of picture frame, which is cool. I totally love that. But sometimes it feels like, you look at an album and it's like you can't quite, it takes a little while to figure out, okay, that's that album. But this one, it really stands out more, I think, in their discography as just having a more unique look to it. So all in all, this is just another really satisfying release from one of the longest running, hardest working bands in metal. The fact that the 5 guys that played in 1983 on such a classic new wave of British heavy metal album as Court and the Act are still together and putting out an album this good is just kind of mind-blowing to me. So, and in fact, I would almost say this is my favorite album since that debut. And I know that's saying a lot, but, the production issues I mentioned earlier aside, I just think the material on here is so strong. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them live when they get out there again. So if you've never checked out the band Satan, totally recommend doing it. And this is as good a place to start as any, I think. Although Cruel Magic, Atom by Atom, even if you want to just go all the way back to 83, start with their debut. But that is it for this album review. And thanks for joining me once again. I appreciate it if you could give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I try to do something new each week. It doesn't always happen, but starting to get a little back on schedule. But anyways, that's it for now. And until next time, stay metal.